does 40 hertz brainwave emission correlate with higher consciousness? There's been a fair amount of work implicating the frontal lobe of the brain. That's the upper cerebral cortex in the front of the head with higher consciousness. And actually in my study, I'm recording frequencies at 40 hertz right above the third eye. So it's in the center of the forehead, and it's interestingly just a very short distance from a spot that is in the esoteric literature associated with clairvoyance, etc., known as the third eye.
Signs and flow states of consciousness. Neurochemically, the brain releases large quantities of endorphins, norepinephrine, dopamine, anandamide, and serotonin flow into our system. These performance-enhancing and pleasurable neurochemicals have a huge influence on our creativity. Stephen Kotler and the Flow Genome Project says that flow states are caused by transient hypofrontality, the temporary deactivation of the prefrontal cortex. This is most interesting because it is the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex that is involved in impulse control and critical thinking. Not surprisingly, this part of the brain doesn't fully develop until we are in our 20s, which explains why children are so comfortable being creative and in the flow, and why they do crazy impulsive things. However, it appears that this part of our brain associated with self-awareness or our inner critic needs to be suppressed for us to enter into flow states. It isn't only the neurochemicals in our brain that produce flow states, it is the electrical frequency or brain waves. According to Kotler, our brains become activated somewhere between alpha, daydreams, and theta, edge of sleep. This is commonly called the lucid state, and is a realm rich with inspiration. Flashes of inspiration are also associated with gamma, but this state is usually fleeting.
You probably know this, I'll go over it quickly, that the various bands in the EEG have been correlated functionally. For example, the slowest waves, delta 0 to 4 hertz with deep dreamless sleep, theta waves 4 to 7 hertz with dreams, a sort of reverie, and also certain paranormal experiences, including out of the body. Alpha is sort of the baseline alert, relaxed state, 7 to 12 hertz. Beta is the active concentration, 13 to 35 hertz. And then we have a gamma band beyond that, 35 to 50 hertz. And actually, there may be even higher emissions from the brain. The point is that people haven't looked until relatively recently because their analog recorders weren't fast enough to record these high frequencies. So only in the digital age have we been able to really see the high frequency emission from the brain. And consequently, the literature in this area is way behind. Just to give you a summary of what has been done here, people looking at practices such as yoga, meditation, and other mind, body, spirit practices find up to 20% more activity in the EEG coming out of the frontal lobe. And there are a few studies on yoga and meditation, but not very many, that suggest an association of 40 hertz from the frontal lobe with clarity and compassion. So in particular meditations, for example, certain Buddhist meditations in the lineage of the Dalai Lama in particular have been studied with that. A couple of recent studies, again, on Buddhist meditation. There was a study by Lutz et al. Published in 2004 showing increases in that band, the gamma band and high beta at the prefrontal location during meditations where they were trying to enhance unconditional love and compassion. And another study showed even more detail, correlations between amplitudes of 40 hertz recorded from this site and a reported clarity of meditation on a moment-to-moment basis. And that was published by Davidson in 2005. Here's a little bit of data from the Davidson paper. Controls shown in the left-hand side are people who are non-meditators, and this is the percent more 40 hertz from the prefrontal region during baseline, et cetera. They can't make much more than just a few percent over baseline, whereas the meditation practitioners make highly significantly more above baseline. Furthermore, meditators have a higher baseline of 40 hertz, as well as during meditation and post-meditation. They don't return to their normal baseline as quickly. Another key function, however, of 40 hertz goes beyond higher brain functions. It seems to have what we call a more important role in the brain associated with heightened awareness. Some have called it the event binding rhythm in response to meaningful stimuli. So, for example, when you are seeing, hearing, and feeling the presence of a UFO, 40 hertz brainwaves are being produced. And Benjamin Libet found that increase in 40 hertz precedes the awareness of a perception by about half a second. Francis Crick, who did a lot of work in neuroscience after his work on DNA, called 40 hertz the neural correlate of consciousness. In the literature, it's abbreviated NCC. I conducted a pilot study, which is still in progress, looking at the functional significance of 40 hertz from the prefrontal region, and here are my 3 research questions. What is the perceived inner state during 40 hertz emission? Do meditators produce more 40 hertz than non-meditators at baseline? And with neurofeedback, which supports feedback particularly at 40 hertz. And then I have one case to show you on the effect of taking an entheogen, Salvia divinorum, and the effect on 40 hertz brainwaves from prefrontal region. Results. The non-meditator's self-assessment at peak values of 40 hertz are as follows. These are statements or abstracted bits from their comments. Detachment from myself, trust in something bigger. Letting something higher come into my consciousness, not trying from the ego. Joy and bliss. Alert, focused on something new, being in the moment. Warmth from the heart chakra and the bottom of feet. Thinking of people I love, including love for those who have passed on. Curiosity, enthusiasm, novelty of experience. Connection with an angelic realm. I should say, here's the meditators. The meditators had these things to say for their peak values of 40 hertz. Joy, clairvoyance, a loving feeling, open heart chakra, relaxed and calm, receptive, a fuzzy feeling, feeling close to the center of the brain, pure love, childlike wonder.
Altered gamma activity has been observed in many mood and cognitive disorders such as Alzheimer's disease, epilepsy, and schizophrenia. Gamma brainwaves 26 to 99 Hz are fascinating. First, because they disappear during anesthesia, suggesting an intrinsic relationship to consciousness itself, but also because they abound in the brains of Tibetan monks who are long-term loving kindness meditators. So this is another website, New Brain, New World, Consciousness, Kundalini, and the New Brain. Consciousness is all there is. There is no separate physical universe outside of consciousness. What we see as the outer world is a mere reflection of the inner mental world. Everything we conceive as real are projections from consciousness. All physical objects and particles are inextricably linked to a conscious observer. The new brain. During the next step of evolution, the frontal brain will evolve to a higher level function. This will happen when Kundalini fuels the brain with more energy. As a result, the right hemisphere will wake up to its true potential. This is called awakening. There you go. Awakening. When Kundalini becomes active, more energy is fed into the frontal brain, allowing for more neural connection to open up between the left and the right hemisphere. This causes a gradual shift of our primary consciousness from the left to the right brain, leading mankind to a much more awakened state. Altered state of consciousness. Altered state induced by meditation, psychedelic drugs, or psychotherapy are different from awakened states of consciousness. The altered states are associated with a general decrease of brain activity. Awakened states are dependent on increased frontal brain activity. Samadhi, the return to the Creator. The concept of samadhi, frequently encountered in the spiritual literature, usually signifies the ultimate state of consciousness. The theory goes that when the Kundalini energy rises along the spine, it eventually reaches the brain where it causes a rapture, which sometimes turns into a full-blown samadhi experience. Such an experience has been described by Indian master Swami Satyananda, who after his own Kundalini awakening wrote, "When Kundalini Shakti reaches Sahasrara, the crown chakra, that is known as union between Shiva and Shakti, as Sahasrara is said to be the abode of higher consciousness or Shiva. Union between Shiva and Shakti marks the beginning of a great experience. When this union takes place, the moment of self-realization or samadhi begins. It is death of the mundane awareness or individual awareness. It is death of the experience of name and form. The experienced and the experiencer are one and the same. There is no multiple or dual awareness. There is only single awareness." The state of samadhi involves an opening up of the bridge between the hemispheres, corpus callosum, and a merging between the left and the right hemisphere. Yeah, that sounds very true to me. If this bridge is strengthened so much that the two minds disappear as two and become one, then integration, then crystallization arises. What George Gurdjieff, Russian philosopher, used to call crystallization of being is nothing but these two minds becoming one. The meeting of the male and the female within. There is union between Shiva and Shakti, between the male and the female principle, which is reflected in the merging of the left and the right hemisphere. Following this analysis of samadhi, it seems obvious that samadhi is creation in reverse. The ego is lost, subject and object disappear, and there is a feeling of oneness with God. Yeah, this is a beautiful state to be in. Samadhi is a state of super consciousness, a transcendental consciousness. Consciousness now is only conscious of itself. Consciousness has turned upon itself. The circle is complete. you have come home. So gamma waves seem to be central to harmony, perhaps even the brain wave signature of compassion itself. Gamma arises while processing all that comes in through our senses, as if they are the glue that helps us have a coherent picture of all the sensory data we receive moment to moment. They've been found to be linked to heightened perception, extremely creative states of high performance, focus and clarity, as well as to high intellectual comprehension and acute self-awareness and spiritual insight. Creative expression. It is no surprise that water is a primary natural element that teaches us about flow. It passes around rocks, as it splashes down mountainsides, falls from the sky as rain, and, though soft and nurturing, it can also smooth stones. Musicians strive to enter a flow state when they are jamming, just as the painter can become lost in the colors and patterns of paint as it is spread across the canvas. Writers experience this phenomena when inspiration grabs them, and athletes experience it on their best days. Life itself is an art form, where we have an idea or vision and then encounter many obstacles that we must negotiate as we cascade towards fulfilling our dreams. We see the contrast between flow and tension in the body of a dancer as we feel the contrast between these two extremes. Even the great martial artist Bruce Lee allowed his expertise to be shaped through his observation of water. In this way we can see how art, nature and spirituality flow together. Now let's add science into the mix. You must be shapeless, formless, like water. When you pour water into a cup, it becomes the cup. When you pour water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. When you pour water into a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Water can drip and it can crash. Become like water, my friend. Bruce Lee. Become like water. Though the practices which help you cultivate the ability to be in a flow state seem counterintuitive in our fast-paced, goal-oriented world, they are integral to our success and happiness. This is not merely something we practice alone, it is a way of behaving in community. We can be the critics to our friends' expression, or we can smile and encourage them to play with ideas. This creates synergy and mutual support, which is at the foundation of a creative culture. Of course, there is a time to be critical, but once you begin to explore the world of flow, you will realize that it is less important than you once realized. If you want to excel with the creativity, flexibility, and confidence that is needed in our modern world, then you may want to take Bruce Lee's advice. Be like water, my friend. The prime characteristic of cosmic consciousness is, as its name implies, consciousness of the cosmos, that is, of the life and order of the universe. Along with the consciousness of the cosmos, there occurs an intellectual enlightenment or illumination, which alone would place the individual on a new plane of existence, would make him almost a member of a new species. To this is added a state of moral exaltation, an indescribable feeling of elevation, elation and joyousness, and a quickening of the moral sense, which is fully as striking and more important both to the individual and to the race than is the enhanced intellectual power. With these come what may be called a sense of immortality, a consciousness of eternal life, not a conviction that he shall have this, but the consciousness that he has it already. I have a saying that foxes are smart. So now you know why. Because they eat this mushroom, and it will obviously enhance their brain as well, just as it does for humans. And right now we sorely need that, because when you look at our degenerated society, I don't know where we are headed, but it's not a good direction. And Marcus Aurelius got it right. The object of life is not to be on the side of the majority, but to escape finding oneself in the ranks of the insane. Look at the madness of the crowds. They're not thinking right, they just follow. And therefore, we need to find a way to get out of this. And I think that enhancing our gamma waves actually might be the way to a better world.